living with. So those are all the announcements for now. Thank you for listening.
Wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The Facebook is loading. Oh, I think we are officially live on Facebook. I see we've got folks coming in from St. Vincent, St. Kitts and Nevis, Baltimore, but Bahamian roots, hello. Okay, more Vinci's in the group. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Love to see it. Hello, everyone. Okay, so we are going to get started with our fibroid talk, women supporting women. I want to introduce Kimya and La'Anna to everyone here. Let me go ahead and read their introductions. So Mrs. La'Anna Douglas is a women's advocate, published model, influencer, writer, and motivational speaker. La'Anna understands that her platform, Hope Still Stands, is bigger than her. La'Anna has made it her life's mission to share her experiences with fertility struggles, sexual abuse, depression, and reproductive health issues. La'Anna has been married to the love of her life, Tim, for 21 years. She is the proud mom to two miracle daughters, Olivia and Anaya, after going through years of infertility along with secondary infertility. La'Anna does not let her past dictate her future by God's grace. Her purpose is to ignite hope and to use her voice for women as well as young girls who are suffering in silence. Welcome, La'Anna. And we also would like to welcome Kimya. Kimya Glasgow is a Caribbean fashion entrepreneur, creative director, and social impact leader based in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. She is the founder of Kimya Glasgow Inc., a lifestyle brand rooted in culture and sustainability. With over 25 years in the creative sector, she is a founding member of the Fashion Association of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the founder of the Irma Norris Foundation. She brings her passion for advocacy, wellness, and women's empowerment to the conversation as a woman committed to supporting others through shared knowledge, experience, and encouragement. Welcome, Kimya. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Kimya, can we start with you? Can you please share your story with us?
Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me. It's such a pleasure to be here and to share this opportunity to share my story. And it's a pleasure also to hear La'Anna's story. And I just want to thank the organization for welcoming me to do so. So I was born in St. Vincent and Grenadines. I grew up in Trinidad. And my mom, to speak a little bit about my background, is a former biology teacher and also a physical education teacher. That's what she did when she was in Trinidad, and when we moved to St. Vincent, she became the director of sport. I put that into context because I come from a very sporty family, and my mom's family is 90% women, one boy thrown in there somewhere in her siblings. And so women in our family are very active. We never looked at periods as an illness. We were encouraged to think of our periods as just part of life, part of being a woman, and that they would not stop us from, your period doesn't stop you from doing anything. So I was very fortunate to have like a very regular cycle during most of my adult life. And I also want to speak to my grandmother, who also taught reproductive health in her capacity in the Anglican Church Mothers Union. So that's one of the reasons why I am an advocate of speaking about the challenge that I personally experienced, because once I started sharing, women started to reach out to me because there's this unfortunate sense of shame that is attached to reproductive health that I want to encourage people to dispel. When you talk about anything below your navel, suddenly it becomes a secret, almost like a sense of shame. And I want to be able to talk openly about my fibroid challenges so that it would encourage women to seek help, to seek options, and not just look at the few options that are maybe available to you locally. And so in terms of my actual fibroid journey, when I was probably about 2 years shy of my 40th birthday, and I started experiencing the bloated stomach, the pain, the painful periods, the mood swings. I became really addicted to chomping on ice cubes, which is a sign of anemia, you know. So I was going through all of that, went to my gynecologist. She would have prescribed me medication that would have helped to stave off the heavy cycles. And as an active person, as a very social person, having to always like watch out for flushes and spills, and if you forget to take one tablet in that one, you know, that one day, you may end up with like a huge accident, you know, in the middle of going out, and you know that's the end of your night. You know, it affects your relationship, you know. So it got to the point where I was completely frustrated. I went back to my doctor and she gave me my options in terms of what were available through her. Now, I say that she's an amazing doctor, and I appreciated the fact that she was very straight with me. She told me my options at that time were to have a myomectomy, which is surgically removing the fibroids. And also, she did explain that during surgery, if they found that the fibroids were not in my womb, in the cavity of my womb, and that they were in the walls or outside of my uterus, that I could have an immediate hysterectomy. And I was just shy of 40, I think, when that conversation happened. And just the idea of being plunged into menopause when all the women in my family went into menopause pretty late in life. I would say probably in their late 50s. And for most of them, it was a smooth transition, no night sweats or hot flashes or anything like that. I didn't want to have to be facing a hysterectomy at nearly 40 and all that that implied, because, you know, that's another taboo subject, unfortunately, that people don't really talk about as much as we should. And I'm happy to see there's actually a movement against that. And so I started Googling to find out what my options were before I made a final decision on the myomectomy option. And I came across a website called fibroidcaribbean.com. I was also able to find some information on YouTube, some women in Trinidad who had gone through that procedure, which is called UFE, uterine fibroid embolization, which is the process of a radiologist inserting a tube into a vein and depositing some surgical grade plastic pellets into that artery that would basically stop the blood that feeds the fibroid, naturally letting the fibroid die a natural death. And no body parts removed. The surgery is minimally invasive. At the time, they said it would just be a nick in your bikini line. But at the time when I had it, it didn't even require that. It was inserted with a syringe. That's how the tube was fed into my artery. And the recovery time, that was another thing. Recovery time was expressed as 2 weeks. I met a lady there from St. Vincent who told me in 4 days she was on the streets. Unfortunately, mine was not 4 days. I took about a week, and then I think it took another week for the drugs to get out of my system because I knew I was feeling a little bit off. But I was extremely happy with the UFE. And for me, yes, I don't have children, but at that time, I didn't want that decision to be made for me. And I wanted to see, you know, let's see what happens. And, you know, I made my peace with whether I was going to have children or not, but I wanted to give myself options, and additionally give myself options in terms of what procedure I was able to have. I know there are other things like laparoscopic surgery. Some people go the natural route with supplements and diet change and things like that. But for me, I think UFE probably worked out to be the best option for me. And just to describe the experience, we were sedated, you weren't fully knocked out. So you were slightly aware of what was going on. And the procedure happened in Trinidad. You go to Trinidad, they do an examination with a doctor first, they do scans, and then They check to see if you're a good case, because not everybody is a good case for UFE. But I would say that it seemed like a large majority of people were. And then they recommend you whether you are for the procedure or not. And Dr. Hacking goes to Trinidad every 6 months. And so they make bulk appointments for people at that time. And then you go back 6 months after when he's back for your follow-up examination. And there's a Vincentian lady, we bounced into each other, we knew each other very well. And when I was going back for my examination, I said, "Are you going?" And she's like, "No. Please tell Dr. Hacking hi. I have my life back and I don't need to see him. It's fine. You know, I'm done." So it is that good in terms of quality of life. And I think that is what the procedure gave to me. And if there's anybody who wants to know anything more about it and what it was like or has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for that. We are going to go straight into LaAnna before we take questions. So if anyone has any questions, write them down so you don't forget them. But thank you so much for sharing your story. It's nice to hear that, you don't always have to immediately go into surgery and that other options were presented to you and you work so hard to advocate for yourself to make sure you had those options available and sought them out. LaAnna, please.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful and excited for this opportunity. Anytime I can share my story, it is just a blessing because we're not by ourselves on these journeys. We're in this together. So my name is LaAnna Douglas. I am in Maryland in the United States. Everyone knows me as Hope Still Stands. And I started my period at the age of 10. And from that time, it was just excruciating pain. I would tell the doctors and tell the nurses, I feel like I'm cramping 3 to 4 days on my left, and then I'm cramping 3 to 4 days on my right. And they started to label me as the girl with bad periods. And so I started to feel like, wait, am I crazy? Is something wrong with me? And over time, my mom and my dad would rush me to the emergency room. I had my first pap smear at the age of 15, and the doctor told my mom that my cervix was invisible, so that he couldn't see it. They didn't recommend me to go to a specialist or to get, a follow-up. He just says, your cervix is invisible. I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know what that meant. In school, they talked about say no to drugs, and they talked about safe sex. They didn't talk about reproductive health. So I didn't know what to look for. I didn't know the questions. My mom didn't know the questions to ask. And fast forward into my 20s, I'm dealing with horrible periods. I mean, it's at another level. Like I'm popping ibuprofen medication like it's candy. I'm in so much pain. Having accidents at school, accidents at work, and just being embarrassed and not understanding what's going on with my body. Fast forward, I finally went to go have this hysteroscopiogram. That's when they inject dye into your uterus and take pictures. And I remember I was just screaming, crying, in so much pain. And the radiologist came in and said, "Mrs. Douglas, you have half a uterus." I'm like, I don't know what that means. Wait, I'm here because of the period pain, because the cyst that's on my ovary. What is half a uterus? I don't understand that. Thank God at the time I was working at the prenatal assessment center at this prestigious hospital. So my husband drove me to my job and I showed my films to the doctor. The doctor put the films in the screen and said, "No, LaAnna, you don't have half a uterus, you have two. You need to go research a reproductive endocrinologist." In that, I researched a reproductive endocrinologist. I found her at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Maryland, and this woman changed my life. She didn't minimize my pain. She didn't say that I was crazy. She didn't call me the girl or the woman with bad periods. She said, "No, I'm getting you in for examination." Soon I was in for laparoscopic surgery. In that laparoscopic surgery, I was diagnosed with fibroids, endometriosis, 2 uteruses, and 2 cervixes. So just imagine, as a woman, as a married woman, as a Black woman, all these years, for 16 years, I've been screaming at the top of my lungs. I feel like I'm cramping 3 to 4 days on my left, and I'm cramping 3 to 4 days on my right. Well, actually, I'm having 2 periods every single month, 2 separate cycles, and having fibroids, and having endometriosis. I knew as a baby, my parents told me as a baby I was born with one kidney. But that coincides with having 2 uteruses and 2 cervixes. But I was called the girl with bad periods. I was ignored. But finally, this wonderful doctor, this woman, listened to me and believed me. I was in this like tornado of emotions. You can imagine, like, I don't understand what this means. I didn't understand that was connected to fertility. All those things, I'm not understanding what that means for my life. And I had to soon get my right cervix open. My right cervix was closed. But the doctor said something to me. She said, don't worry about your fibroids. Don't worry about them right now. We're just trying to get you pregnant. Let's do Clomid. Let's do IVF. IVF did not work for me. And this is a trigger warning for us. I did IVF and the results came back from my husband and I, and it was negative. And I spiraled into a deep depression and almost killed myself. That's how I felt like I wasn't woman enough. I felt like that I wasn't important enough to be cared for. I was carrying that weight, that load of past things that happened to me, but also having doctors not listening to me and finally finding out the diagnosis. I felt like my body betrayed me. So all these emotions were rushing in, and then I couldn't get pregnant. So fast forward, after 8 years of infertility, we were pregnant naturally by God's grace with our first daughter. I'm just so grateful for that. I have to say that. But I forgot about the fibroids. I still was having, the 2 periods every month, having horrible cramps, and I had surgery for endometriosis, but the fibroids was in the back of my mind because the doctor said, don't worry about it. We just want to get you pregnant and move forward. So I had my daughter, Olivia. During the pandemic, I don't know if you all dealt with the pandemic in the islands, but in the United States, we had that horrible pandemic. And I remember I had this horrible pain on my left side. Like, I never have a problem with my left uterus. So what is this? I go after all these procedures that were done. I finally went to get this one balloon procedure done where they put the balloon in your uteruses so they could take pictures. And they said, do you know that you have fibroids? I'm like, wait a minute. Oh, I totally forgot. I was able to find a doctor because at that point, someone said, let's just do a hysterectomy. And I was feeling, let's do a hysterectomy, to be honest with you, because I endured so many pain, dealt with so much pain for 30 years. I finally have a miracle daughter after 8 years of infertility. I was content. And so I was like, you know what, let's just do a hysterectomy. This Black doctor I found, her name is Dr. Kara Simpson. I found her at Johns Hopkins. She said, there's options. You don't have to do a hysterectomy. There's other options that we can do. And she did the robotic laparoscopic myomectomy and removed 3 fibroids. The, post-op care, it was, hard. There was some moments there was hard because of the oxygen or whatever fluids they put inside of you to do the surgery. You deal with a lot of gas, a lot of bloating, a lot of pain in the healing process. But I tell you, life was totally changed for me. It was like I was a new woman. 6 months later, after another 8 years of secondary infertility, I had my baby girl. I got pregnant with my baby girl, Anaya, and she's now 3 years old. I was 40 years old. I'm 44 now. So that thing of, I was told that I would never have children. I was labeled as the girl with bad periods. Now I'm a mom of 2 sharing my story. That hope still stands. No matter what you're diagnosed with, life is not over. Even if I didn't have children, I was still worthy. I was still enough as I was. So now I'm doing everything I can to help other women. So that's my story.
Thank you so much. That was so touching. And look at, I'm sure not just the 2 of you, but others in the group here told, the very first thing you're told is, oh, hysterectomy. Why is that the first? Why is that not the last? Why is that not the last? Why is that the first? If anyone has questions, I'm going to hand it over to Odelia Odelia, if you have any questions, Odelia is going to read any questions anyone has. If anyone wants to come off of mute, that is also possible as well.
Okay, good night, everybody. We don't have any questions, but persons were thanking both La'ana and Kimya for sharing their stories. So if you are shy, you can just type it in the chat. If you're not so shy, you can unmute right now and ask the ladies any questions. They've both had treatment for fibroids, two different options. So as you can see, ladies, there are options and not just a hysterectomy. So the floor is now open to anybody who has any questions for the two beautiful ladies. And don't be shy. This is a judgment-free space.
I'll get it rolling. So we are a group of women of color here, but we've got one West Indian living in America and one West Indian living home. How would you say the way you are perceived and your cultural background, how do you feel that that affected not just the way doctors treated you, but also how you chose to, or how your culture affected the way you managed or the way you viewed your problem and how you attacked it?
I'll go first, Lana. I think that my experience is a little bit different from the average woman because, like I said, in my home, it was very much encouraged that if you have a problem, you don't just keep it to yourself. But I would say because our healthcare system, not to dog our healthcare system, because we do have amazing doctors here, it's just that in terms of capital investment in a developing nation, in terms of treatments and diagnoses and things like that, we would be limited because obviously that dollar amount is not necessarily there. So you can get diagnosed, certainly you can have a different forms of diagnoses like ultrasound and so on, those are available. But then in terms of your options of treatment, they're fairly limited, so it's just under the knife, getting cut, or taking medication. And I know some people try the natural route, which definitely was not successful for me. So I'm a big believer in what they call integrated medicine, which you can use modern and you can use traditional. But I don't think we should necessarily abandon modern interventions. But I do think that the taboo subject of talking about reproductive health is a problem within the Caribbean community. That somehow with warped senses of maybe religion and those kinds of things make people feel as if, somehow that's like you're talking about sex and sex is a bad subject and, just not informing women that this is something that they could potentially go through, and that's just one on the list, when you consider PCOS and endometriosis and I mean, La'ana's like complicated situation, talking and sharing as women, that's what we do well. That's our strength. But then somehow we are muzzled or we muzzle society encourages us to muzzle ourselves instead of having that conversation. My aunts have shared with like friends of theirs, younger friends of theirs about my experience. And it's often almost, you would think we were dealing in illegal substances, the way people like quietly contact me and sensitively, because it's such a sense of shame that a lot of people have as if they did something wrong. Because, of course, there's a theory about chemical relaxers. It's why Black women suffer from fibroids more than other races and things like that. But it's like, if that's what's available to you and that's what you're using, you can't be blamed for that if that is really the reason, And so I think this is one of the reasons why when I was asked to talk, I jumped at it because I'm like, if I could do anything to dispel this idea that we have to talk about these things in whispers, because we're afraid the men folk will hear or some craziness like that. It affects men too. I mean, these are our partners. These are people who are looking out for our best interest. You know, it messes up people's sex lives, you know. It's not lost on me that I met my husband literally the year, like months after I had the procedure. I think we started talking on the phone before I had gone to do the procedure. And then I think when I came back, you know, that's when we really started to get to know each other a little bit more. I think my confidence in myself was just went up because now I was a full human being again, not just like an accident, you know, like there was an incident when I was out and I just had like one big accident. And I'm telling you, I remember that part of the Bible where a woman touched Jesus's cloak and he felt the life go out of him. I literally understood what that meant because that's how I felt. You know, it's like nobody really understands that feeling, you know, that you have when you're feeling like you're being attacked by your own body, you know, and it's crazy that there's so many women's conditions that aren't dealt with because men don't get them. You know, sorry to say, no disrespect to men, but you know, if men had fibroids, they would have found the solution to fibroids a long time ago. Long time ago. So, Anna, I'm happy to hear your version.
Yeah, everything you said, I agree with. I agree with it. I'm glad you mentioned about the men. The men need to know what women are going through. They need to know. They have mothers, they have sisters, they have cousins, they have aunts, they have grandmothers, and the men need to know. Also, when I was diagnosed with all the things that were going on with me, and then when I had that fibroid surgery, my mom said, "Oh yeah, you know what? My mom had a hysterectomy because she had fibroids." I'm like, "What?" And my aunt, "Yeah, I bled a lot, you know, after having my babies, and I had to go have a surgery." My sister, you know, had to have surgery. And it's like in our culture, especially as African Americans, we don't share what we're going through. If someone has a mental health situation going on, we tell them, "Oh, that's just Uncle so and so. He's just in the back room. We're not going to talk about that." If somebody had a miscarriage or whatever, "Oh, we're not going to shh. We're not going to talk about that." And so we oftentimes do that, but we can gather around a table to eat. We can go to the grocery store together. We can you know, go shopping together and put on clothes and go get our hair done together, but we don't talk about the real issues.
Yeah.
And that oftentimes happens in our community. And also there is the stigma, being shamed, being not believed. I mean, so many times in my 20s, I was looked at like something's wrong with her. I remember one time my mom and dad took me to the emergency room and the nurses are standing in the doorway just staring at me like, and I'm crying. I'm in so much pain. "Well, we're just going to put a speculum in you, give you an IV, and give you some ibuprofen. We're going to send you home." And they're looking at me in shame, like I'm making up what I'm going through. They always say that Black women are stronger than any other woman so that we can deal with pain more better than someone else. And that's not the statement that should be said. What should be said is that Black women deserve the best care just like any other woman. Black women should be believed just like any other woman. We should not have to whisper and cover up what we're going through. We should be able to scream it from the rooftops. If someone's not listening to you, this one doctor is not listening to you, go to the next doctor. You have the right to get a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth opinion. You don't have to be belittled, talked about. So many times I was talked about. So many times I was said, "Just take some ibuprofen and go home."
Mhm.
And it needs to stop. No matter your diagnosis, no matter what you're going through, you deserve the best care possible because you are enough.
Yes. And also to add to what you're saying, La'ana, Black women die at higher rates because our pain is not understood or respected or valued because somehow Black women carry the weight of the world, the weight of the sky on their shoulders. And apparently we're not supposed to complain. We're not supposed to feel pain. We're just supposed to be quiet and take care of everybody else around us. And that's why, you know, so many bad things happen to us because often we're trying to hold it together for everybody else around us and not be an object of pity or anything like that. So often, you know, I mean, fibroids are treatable, but it could be something else, and because we often are not listened to, it's terrible that how we're treated, and that, the angry Black woman is just like a trope that is extended into other things, So we have to be our own advocates. We have to educate ourselves. My little guilty reality TV watching, I noticed there was a trend among all the Black reality shows like Real Housewives of Atlanta and Potomac and things like that, where there was generally a large Black cast. And then now I hope you're not hearing the rainstorm outside, but now that there are Black women in more of the cast, I remember on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, there was one of the women, she had fibroids as well. And I listened very carefully to the procedures. And some of these women chose hysterectomies. And I said, even in great US of A, it depends on your state, your district, what clinics are available to you. In a space where you could probably go to the next state and get a procedure, even wealthy, well-to-do women that are exposed. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't have had hysterectomies, because that is also a choice if that is what someone wants to do, and they don't want to, as they say, don't deal with it anymore. But it amazed me that uterine fibroid embolization and laparoscopy came up late in the conversation, even among these women who are supposedly wealthy, well-to-do in the highest enclaves, economic enclaves of the US, that I in the Caribbean actually had access to something that they seem to not have access to. And just to say, Dr. Hacking was my recommendation, but I noticed recently, I believe it is in the Bahamas, you all could correct me if I'm wrong, that there's also a new clinic there that I've seen advertising very stringently via social media, that they also do uterine fibroid embolization as well as an option. So that is something that I share wholeheartedly, that there's more options for persons to get treatment.
Thank you, ladies. We have two questions in the comments, but it can be combined into one. But I'm listening to you both, and I'm just here sitting thinking to myself, did we all have the same life? And have all of our doctors read the same book? Because and I see Alicia there nodding, so I'm sure that means she's had the same experience, that you're being told, oh, just take this paracetamol, you'll be fine. And as Black women, our pain is often dismissed, we are not taken seriously. And I like to tell people, this is your hard-earned money that you're spending to see a doctor. And even if you're going to the clinic where it is free, you still have the right to care and consideration. We may not have options like other countries, but we can still be treated with care and consideration. And the way that we are approached sometimes can be so rough and harsh. It's like, my God, let me just go back home, because what's happening here? And as Black women, you're expected to bear so much without complaining. And the minute we start saying, okay, I'm not feeling good, she again, she no weary. Yes, it's me again. I'm going to talk about it until you help me. And I'm going to talk about it to help other women. When I first started sharing my story, the comment I kept getting, but that's private. Why would you want people to know? Why are you talking about that? If we don't talk about it, women will continue to feel like they are alone. They will not know that there are options. They will not know where to go to get help. They will not know who to come and whisper to. Because I've also gotten pull me in a corner and whisper to me in the corner, because I don't want anybody else to know that I have these issues. Or I've had women in my family, since I have been diagnosed and been out and loud with it, they would message. I'm like, I'm so proud of you for being so brave. I have had X, Y, and Z, but I don't want anybody to know. And it's not until I started talking that I realized These conditions have to have genetic links because so many women in my family have these conditions. And it goes back to why we need to talk, because if you don't know your family history, you'll be left wondering, but what's really going on? If we know family history from up front, then we can be prepared in our minds that if X, Y, and Z happens, okay, this is something I need to look out for. Yes, Anna has her hand up, and then we will go to the questions in the comment section.
Yes, I was based on what you just said. They want us to give up. When we go to these doctor's appointments and you share what's going on with you and they try to minimize it, and then you start to question your own self, and then you're like, well, let me just go home and keep taking the ibuprofen. They want
Yeah.
you to give up. They want you to quiet your voice. This is where that strength, we all have a strength that we don't know. We haven't tapped into it yet. I mean, I have now, but there was a moment in my 20s I didn't tap into that strength. I didn't understand. I was very timid. So I would just go home, get my purse, get dressed, and go home. But now it's like, oh, no, 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 no. You're not going to minimize my pain. You're not going to quiet my voice. You're not going to tell me that I'm crazy. So they want us to give up. This is where you have to say, you know what? No, I'm moving on to another doctor. I'm writing down all my questions. I'm sharing how I'm feeling, because that what we're diagnosed with fibroids and all the other reproductive health issues that go on, it taps into your mental health in a negative way. So you have to share what you're going through. Holding it in is not healthy. I held it in for years, and that's where the depression came. So it's important, if those doctors are not listening to you, or the nurse practitioner or whoever it is, please also share what you're going through. Please talk to your family, a loved one, someone close to you that you can trust. Let them know. Like, I just need you to listen to me. Sometimes you don't need anyone necessarily to say anything back to you. You just need someone to have a listening ear. So I encourage you all, whoever is going through this right now, please, please don't give up on your journey. Please, please speak up for yourself. Don't let anyone quiet your voice. And write everything down. Any symptom, take pictures. If you have a blood clot that comes out, anything, take pictures of everything, write it down. No question is dumb. I have, like I said, 2 uteruses, 2 cervixes, endo, fibroids, and I was diagnosed with PCOS at the age of 40. So no question is dumb. So ask the questions, write them down. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. And the comment and question is, thank you both for sharing your stories. Often women develop fibroids after surgery. Has that been your experience? And if not, what lifestyle changes have you made to prevent them from returning?
Well, I can go first. Lifestyle change, absolutely none. Like I said before, I don't know if the homeopathic natural changes worked for me. And when I say absolutely none, I meant my life just got bigger. I went out more, I swam more, I lived more, I ate more, I drank more, I just did all the things. I was living my 30s and early 40s again in my 40s, you know, so life went up. But to be 100% transparent, and I did forget this detail, they did warn me that they weren't able to get, there was one fibroid that was very small, because the one that I had, I think, was the size of a large lemon, that they said that they couldn't get to with the embolization, that it wasn't, it didn't take for that one. And they said, you know, expect that it may grow on its own, etc., unless I went into early menopause or something like that. So I actually recently saw some symptoms that it could possibly be that the fibroid is growing. And considering that that was over 12 or 14 even years ago, I consider that to be a victory still. So I actually have an appointment to go see my OBGYN soon, because it could be that, it could be something else. So, you know, it's not something you want to really delay on. And when I met the other set of women who were having surgery, the procedure at the same time as I was, there was a lady who, she came from a very large Indian family, and all of her sisters had children, and she had fibroids, and she was having fertility issues, and she had the procedure several years before, and after that procedure, she got pregnant, she had her son, but they also warned her, with the pregnancy, the fibroid could grow back. And she said the fibroid grew as the baby was growing. And she said, yes, there were difficulties, but she's happy for her child. And she believed in the procedure so much that she came back the second time to have it dealt with a UFE procedure. So she was a believer in the procedure. It's not that the procedure was bad, it's that they warn you that because it's not precise cutting, you know, that they may not get some of the fibroids. So yes, the fibroids can grow back, but I would say that over a decade of not having to deal with fibroids and all that that entails is, I would do it again in a heartbeat. So if I do have to deal with it, I would go back to get that procedure done. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you, Lana.
So the question I wanted to get back to, so it says, a lot of women develop fibroids after surgery. Has that been your experience? My experience is a little different because I have the 2 uteruses and 2 cervixes. And I've had 4 surgeries in general for all the things that were going on. And I also had a C-section with my last baby. So I had a lot of scar tissue. And this is not to make anyone afraid, but I just want to let you know, I had a lot of scar tissue. So just this June, I had a bowel obstruction because of the scar tissue. So I had to have surgery. But my situation is different because I have so many things going on with me. But these are questions that you can ask. Can the fibroids come back after having surgery? Does scar tissue form? And what does that mean for my fertility? What does that mean for my uterus? What does that mean for my bowels? Are there things that I can do to help keep myself regular? Yes, fibroids are a reproductive health diagnosis, but you also have to think about staying regular, eating healthy, making sure that your blood pressure doesn't get too high. Check on your heart. All these things are connected. If you find yourself having a lot of headaches, ask your doctor, why am I having these headaches? Can you check my blood? Can you check my blood pressure? So these are just warnings that you just have to keep an eye on, that you need to ask the questions about. But definitely my situation, like I said, is a little bit different from the normal woman that has 1 uterus. But let's keep that in mind about scar tissue, about fibroids coming back. I honestly believe PCOS, fibroids, and endometriosis are all connected. So I never would have thought, you have endometriosis, well, you probably have fibroids, or you have PCOS, you probably have endo. So also ask about that. Hey, can I get an ultrasound? Can I get an MRI to just see what else is going on? It doesn't hurt to do that. If you're able to do that, I don't know about your insurance and things like that, but at least ask the question.
Very good points. Thank you so very much, ladies. I'll hand back. Oh, there's a hand up. Dilali, I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
You said that perfectly. Thank you,
Okay.
ladies, for your stories. I mean, just a lot that could be said around that. But I wanted to get your both perspectives, given the journey that you both have been on over multiple years. How would you, from a patient perspective, design what might be your ideal treatment option that is non-surgical? I'm really kind of curious in terms of what would that look like for you that would honor what you've gone through in a much more humane fashion and not just accepting the interventions that are there. Thank you.
I wish oh, go ahead.
No, Lana, please. You go first.
I think for me, I wish that I had the option of UFE. I didn't hear about UFE until after I had the robotic laparoscopic myomectomy. I didn't have the option. A lot of the procedures that can be done, those instruments cannot fit into my uteruses. So I'm a rare case. They said they would do some type of ablation, but like my sister had an ablation, but I can't get it because the instrument that goes in doesn't work for me. The certain type of birth control that goes into a normal uterus, I can't get it because it doesn't go into my uteri. It doesn't fit. So my situation is a little different, but if I could, I would have done the UFE. I would have sought out some natural things that I could have done, as in, eating different things or certain medication that I could take that could shrink fibroids. But for my situation, like I said, I'm a rare case, so I wish I could have done the UFE.
Well, first of all, I think Lana is such a much better advocate of healthy living than I am, because I think I just was so excited. I just went buck wild, and not that I wasn't eating well. It's just that, if there was something to drink, I drank it. If there was something to eat, I ate it, because I just felt like I had my life back and I wanted to just grab life. But if I had to redesign that whole experience, I do have a friend who is a homeopath. And if there was, because I'm so much more into healthy living now than I was at that stage, that I wish that there was a combination of herbal supplements that women could take that could potentially stave off the heavy bleeding and things like that. I sincerely don't regret having the UFE, because I don't regard it really as surgery, because nobody cut me open, nobody knocked me out. So it is a medical procedure, but I would say as a minimally invasive option, it rates right up there, because I'm one of those people. I'm terrified of being put under anesthesia, and I mean, I know people go under anesthesia and wake up every single day, every minute of the day, but that was just one of my freaky kind of things that I didn't want to have to deal with. So that gave me this option actually was like the most amazing one for me. And I just wish that I had maybe gotten an earlier warning that this was something that was potentially going to come my way, so that when it started happening, I wasn't so confused and terrified. I don't know of any other of my female relatives who have gone through it. It could have come from my father's side of the family. Or maybe there's a distant aunt or cousin or somebody who suffered through it that I had no idea that they did. I just assumed that they didn't, because most of the women in my family are so open. So I would say more information, more talking, more access to the options from the get-go. Yeah, and if there was an option that was even less invasive, I would have taken it, but I'm not aware of one at this point. So, I rather this. And I mean, the whole thing with UFE is once that blood supply is closed off, the fibroid itself dies a natural death. Sometimes you pass it out, or sometimes it just closes up inside of you, and that's it, never to be heard from again, hopefully. So that is my preferred method, because it wasn't, it was costly, but I mean, compared to like surgeries I've heard of, manageable, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You.
Thank you, ladies. I'll hand back over to Alicia, who will take us on to the next segment.
Wonderful. Thank you, ladies, so much. It was such an impactful speech from both of you. I really feel like everyone got a really good understanding of what it's like to live with fibroids, the different options that are available, and what those experiences are like. And thank you again for coming to speak with us today. I know, Kimya, you have to go, but Leanna, I hope you can stick around for a little bit, because our next speaker is about to come up. And hello, Abby. Let me highlight you there. Perfect. Okay. All right. So this is Abby. She is the founder of Lake Health and Wellbeing, a public health NGO based in St. Kitts and Nevis, which aims to improve the health and well-being of its local, regional, and online community through research, community-based interventions, advocacy, and offering public health services to small organizations. She started her career in the pharmaceutical industry and has over 15 years of experience in the health sector. Abi is also very passionate about giving back to her community and over the years has volunteered for numerous causes. Abi holds a BSc in medical biochemistry from the University of Birmingham, an MSc in clinical biochemistry with molecular biology from the University of Surrey, and an MPH from King's College. Thank you so much, Abi Begho, for joining us this evening.
Hi, good evening, everyone. And thank you so much to She is Lotus for the opportunity to speak today. And of course, thank you and much respect to Anna and Kimya for presenting today. And a lot of what they said has really come up in the research that I'm going to share with you today. And I think it really highlights the fact that these stories are not isolated, and we really need to speak up about some of the experiences that we have so that we can show our policymakers that really we do need action around fibroids. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is how the research that we did and how we're trying to translate some of that research into action. So I'll just tell you just very quickly a little bit about us, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the key findings from our fibroids qualitative research project. And so this was a qualitative research project that we did here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And really the idea is to get behind the data and to really understand people's experiences. And then after that, I'll tell you a little bit about how we've started to address some of the issues raised during our research project. I'll then finish up with some conclusions, and then we can open up for some questions. So just to tell you a little bit about us, so we're a public health NGO in St. Kitts and Nevis, and we aim to improve the health and well-being of our local, regional, and online communities, and we do that in a number of ways. Our major focus has been on non-communicable diseases, as well as women's health. And of course, non-communicable diseases and women's health overlap and intersect, and so they're all the same to us. So our approach really has been to carry out research to identify gaps and understand health needs, to advocate for evidence-based health policies and interventions, and to empower the public to make informed decisions about their health through health education and public health interventions, really to address gaps, provide support, and bring about change. And on the right, we just have a few projects that we've been working on here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so we've been trying to work on a range of different projects, whether that's advocacy, whether that's forming alliances, which is what this is here, the St. Kitts and Nevis NCD Alliance. So as it relates to research, I think one of the first research projects that we did conduct was the Fibroids Research Project. And we did this back in 2020, which is quite a way away now. And the idea behind the project was to understand the experience of women in St. Kitts and Nevis who are living with fibroids. And this was a collaboration between Soca Girls Rock. They provided us with a little grant to do the project. And we had advice from Sarit Brown Research and Consulting. And we prepared a very long research report, which is available on our website. And we're very happy to share it with you if you would like. So in terms of the aims of the project, it was to understand women's experience of fibroids. So we wanted to understand women's lived experience. What are they going through? And we purely wanted to just get the patient perspective and the patient point of view. We also wanted to describe any challenges that women with fibroids may experience and how that may impact their health and well-being. And then we also wanted to identify any support needs so that these can be addressed. So a lot of what we found really aligns with what the two speakers previously have raised and shared with us tonight. So when we look at the impact of fibroids on women, we really see that fibroids affects every aspect of a woman's life. And so if we start off with women's physical health, women described to us that they would experience severe pain. And this wasn't just normal everyday pain. This was debilitating pain that really left them feeling like they could not cope. So some women explained that, the pain was very painful. Sometimes they broke down and cried. They couldn't function. It was just really difficult to get up and move around. And also other symptoms of the heavy menstrual bleeding. And this is bleeding that really just was so heavy that, again, it stopped them from functioning. And then that led to anemia and all of the different side effects of anemia. So feeling fatigued, and a range of other symptoms. And these are symptoms were very disruptive and really affected women's quality of life. It also affected women's personal and social life. And so what women explained to us, like I've just mentioned, that fibroids totally disrupted their daily activities. So even the things that we sort of take for granted, the types of clothes that women could wear. So women started to wear clothes that were darker. So shying away from wearing white clothes and light clothes, now having to wear, darker clothes in case they had an accident. It disrupted sleep. So if you can imagine, you're having severe pain and heavy menstrual bleeding, it means that you can't really sleep very well at night. So then, all the effects of being tired when you in the morning, not having had a good night's sleep, it affected relationships, and that's personal relationships, marriages, really a lot of misunderstanding, lack of understanding, issues with friendships and lack of understanding there as well. Just people trivializing concerns, not listening, not understanding what women are going through. So it really affected women's relationships, and like I said, disrupted women's social life. And so even women were not wanting to go out anymore because they just felt, well, I might have an accident, or I just feel like a burden. I'm constantly having to go to the bathroom, and then people are looking at me funny. So there was just a range of different issues around how fibroids affected women's personal and social life that we really don't appreciate when we think about this condition. And then professional life, this was huge. So fibroids had a significant impact on women's professional lives. So when you think about it, you're experiencing all the symptoms that I just mentioned: severe pain, heavy menstrual bleeding, and then you're then dragging yourself to work as well because you feel like, I just can't take this time off of work, or you literally can't take the time off of work because that affects your finances. So you're dragging yourself to work. You're therefore there's lack of productivity because you're in pain. You're having heavy menstrual bleeding, so you can't focus. There are lots of different, impacts when you're in the workplace. And then on top of that, you then have, insensitive comments from your colleagues. Your manager is not understanding you, and so it creates a lot of tension in the workplace. And then that tension can lead to you thinking, what, I am just going to leave this job, or people feel pushed out of a job. There's so many different scenarios that happen when in the workplace around chronic health conditions, and fibroids really is one that really affects women's ability to progress in the workplace because they're feeling like, they have to take a lot of time off work, and they can't thrive in the workplace. They can't give their best in the workplace. And then with the lack of understanding as well. So it creates a whole sort of negative dynamic in the workplace that we really do need to address. Finances. So, there's the cost of care. We have to multiple appointments, going to see the doctor, back and forth, having to have the medical procedures, medication. A single, medication may seem cheap, but if you're on medication chronically and regularly for a long period of time, that really does add up. Then you're having to go through multiple pads a day. That in itself also adds up. So this can really be very, very costly and affect women's finances as well. And then when you think of all of that, all of that significantly affects a woman's mental health. So women described to us that they felt a lot of anxiety, they felt a lot of fear, they felt a lot of stress and distress. And so really, as I said, it just really impacts every aspect of a woman's life. And I think there are areas that we don't really realize and that we take for granted, and we're really seeing it in this research, how fibroids affects women's daily life, social life, personal life, professional life. And then here is just a little quote from somebody that said, I just want to live a normal life. I feel very restricted sometimes. I won't go to certain places because I feel like I'm going to mess up the place. I've had many episodes. And this just tells you, the kind of concerns that women have, the fact that they feel like they can't go out because they might mess up, they might have an accident, or they might be in pain. So it really does impact every aspect of a woman's life. So also what we looked at during our research was, what are some of the barriers to achieving good health and well-being when it comes to women who are living with fibroids? And this is also highlighted by Laanya and Kimya, the speakers before, a lot of these issues. And I think one of the most significant barriers is stigma and embarrassment. So there's still a lot of stigma around fibroids, around issues like endometriosis, PCOS, menstrual health issues. There's still a lot of stigma around those conditions and a lot of embarrassment. Some of the symptoms are very embarrassing, and that can stop women from reaching out for help. And so stigma and embarrassment are things that we need to address to ensure that women feel comfortable enough to reach out and seek support. Women also described a lack of accurate, culturally relevant information. So they found it very hard to find information. And sometimes there was a lot of information, but then it was hard to understand, what is this true? Is that true? Is this accurate? Is that not accurate? So it's very hard to kind of sift through some of that information. And then, you know, there's a lack of culturally relevant information. There's a lot of information from the UK, there's a lot of information from the US, but there's not a lot of information that's Caribbean based. And so people wanted a lot more information around, you know, particular bush tea that I can drink that might be able to help, or just information that was just relevant, like what health centers can I go to, you know, to help me get the support that I need with my fibroids. So just really culturally relevant, localized information was really lacking. And then just generally, there was just a lack of awareness of fibroids and awareness of the symptoms of fibroids. And so because of this meant that women were living with symptoms, not realizing actually that I might have an underlying issue. And so women were living with very disruptive symptoms for years. I mean, in one situation, there was a young lady that had started having symptoms when she was a teenager, right up until her 30s, and not realizing that actually she had fibroids, and she wasn't diagnosed with fibroids until her 30s. So a lot of lack of awareness of fibroids and their symptoms. And this means that there's a delay in diagnosis because people aren't aware that actually their symptoms could be something underlying. So lack of empathy. So again, society can be very unkind when we have symptoms related to our menstrual health. There can be issues around the way people are treated, the comments that people make, and all of these things, which may stop women from reaching out for help. And when they do reach out for help, you know, they can meet a lot of sort of insensitivities. And this, again, affects women's health and well-being. We also found a lot of health system gaps. And I think this is really just to do with the fact that really there is no sort of national focus on fibroids. So we don't have awareness campaigns on fibroids. And so there isn't sort of policy, a women's health strategy or policy that really deals with all these issues and really deals with fibroids. So there are a lot of health system gaps. So for example, you know, we might not necessarily have all the different treatment options for women available in St. Kitts and Nevis. You know, one thing that came up was women who have fibroids but have no symptoms. How do you manage and guide and support those women? You know, do you leave them? Do you regularly monitor them? How often do you monitor them? So those kind of things were coming up. So quite a few sort of health system gaps as well. And then really the impact of all of these barriers was just that women felt disempowered, they said they felt isolated, and they silently battled through painful and uncomfortable menstrual symptoms when they really didn't need to, really, because if we had all of these issues addressed, women could be diagnosed quickly, treated quickly, and not having to sort of go through and battle through all of these painful symptoms and disruptive symptoms. So then we also looked at what are some of the factors that positively affected women's well-being, and we have some lessons learned here. And so I'm just going to pick 3 areas because, and if you want to read about more, then you know you can read through our research report. So the first one, and I think that came out in the story of the previous speakers, was a really good doctor-patient relationship. I think this is like the beginning of how we can improve women's health and well-being when it comes to fibroids. And so there were a lot of examples in our research that showed us of a good doctor-patient relationship and what that could look like. And I guess it really starts with good communication between doctor and patient. The doctor and patient need to be able to have an open, comfortable conversation about women's symptoms, women's health, what's going on. The doctor, and related to that, the doctor needs to have a really good bedside manner. And I think Odelia had mentioned sometimes, you know, that doctors can be a bit rough and gruff. And so really we need doctors that are a bit more compassionate and have a really good bedside manner. And we do have really good doctors, and most of them do have a good bedside manner, but we just have to make sure that there's that same quality of care across all doctors and gynecologists. Also, just doctors providing women with all the information they need to understand their situation and make informed decisions about their health. So being provided with the treatment options, being provided with guidance on how to manage. So just being provided with all the information, because what we found sometimes was that women left an appointment feeling like there were gaps, you know, like they still had questions. And so we just really need to be able to provide women with all the information that they need so that they can make those informed decisions. And then another issue that came up was just making sure that our doctors don't have any biases or preconceived notions about their patient. So sometimes something that came up in our research project was that sometimes doctors would say, oh, it's your age, you're having these symptoms because of your age, you're getting older, things are changing, and they would sort of make judgments based on someone's age or someone's weight. Maybe you need to lose weight. Maybe if you lost weight, your symptoms might improve. And, so making sort of all these different sort of statements about women without really digging deeper and understanding what the underlying cause may be to some of these symptoms. And then something else that came up with the previous speakers was really, doctors validating women's concerns and not trivializing what women are saying about their bodies and about their symptoms. Okay, it might be a menstrual health symptom, but that doesn't mean it's a normal symptom. So listening to the women when they say, I'm in pain, my periods are really painful, and really trying to understand how to understand whether that pain is significant pain and pain that could be due to something underlying. So I think it's really about doctors really trying to listen, understand women's concerns, and not trivialize those concerns either. And then I think the final one was more around the patient herself. So the patient being able to clearly communicate their symptoms to the doctor and really being prepared for that first appointment. What we found was that when women were really prepared for that first appointment, they were able to clearly articulate, this is my symptom, this is how long I've been having it, this is the type of pain, then that, that also helped in terms of making that appointment a little bit more like effective and efficient. So all in all, a good doctor-patient relationship can really help improve a woman's experience as they navigate their journey with fibroids. So the second thing that we found was really the power of social connection. So living with fibroids can feel very isolating, and women can often feel very misunderstood. And what we found in our research was women told us that they felt empowered and happier when they connected with other women with fibroids, because you're kind of forming like this lovely fibroid sisterhood where there's somebody that understands you, they have a shared experience, you can support each other. But also they felt empowered and happier when they had around them informed and empathetic friends and family. So these are people that really understand or take the time to understand what they're going through and are able to provide them with useful support and useful advice. And then, of course, like how I'd mentioned before, being connected to trusted and empathetic healthcare professionals. So if we talk a little bit about women staying connected to each other, like I said, it created like a really nice, powerful support system that helped women improve their mental health. They had someone they could speak to. And this is just a nice quote here around, it was almost like an epiphany. This was a person that actually identified people that were living with fibroids as well. And it was just so wonderful for her to connect with people that understood her. And therefore she was able to get that support. When it comes to friends and family, what we found was that they can really be powerful advocates if they are informed and empathetic. They can empower women to take action, and they also are able to highlight that something is wrong even before women realize it. So if you have a sister, of whoever, a husband or whoever it is, and they're very observant, they can see and observe certain symptoms within you. And if they're informed, they will be able to say to you, your menstrual cycle is not quite right. Don't you think you should try and maybe go to the doctor and have it checked out? So we found that there are people, there are friends and family that can really be there for you, highlighting things that might be wrong that you don't even notice at the time. And, friends and family, are encouraging people to make appointments. They can, go with you to appointments. So they can be really powerful advocates at the appointment as well. So when you're at the appointment, they can be with you to advocate on your behalf as well. And of course, friends and family can provide practical and emotional support. And really what we learned from this is that actually what we need to do is include friends and family in all the fibroids education discussions so that they're really up to speed, informed, and so they can be that advocate and they can be that support system as well. And then the third thing was around how we can help improve the health and well-being of women living with fibroids is really about the patient taking control of their health. So, fibroids can take control of a woman's whole life. It can just consume women. But what we found when we spoke to women and interviewed them was that they can take some of that control back. And there are two ways that we found women could take their control back, and that's through holistic self-care and through effective self-management. Sometimes these words are used interchangeably, but they are slightly different. So I'm just going to go through. So with self-care, the definition really is around the decisions and actions taken independently of healthcare professionals to better manage day-to-day challenges and improve well-being. So what we found was that women living with fibroids who had the information and tools to practice self-care felt empowered, and this improved their health and well-being. But what we found was that the self-care had to be holistic. It couldn't just be, well, I'm just going to focus on one aspect and then that's it, but it had to be quite holistic. And so what we did was we kind of mapped out the different types of self-care, and what women can do to try and really engage in self-care around fibroids. So the first is like physical self-care, and how we looked at that was like, how do you understand how to manage your fibroid symptoms? And so the lessons from our research are that really it's trying to understand things like, what lifestyle changes do you need to make to help in terms of managing your symptoms? What dietary changes do you need to make? What exercise changes do you need to make? Do you need to become more active? It's also thinking about pain management, finding the best pain management strategy for you. And also thinking about it's also thinking about herbal remedies and home remedies, because a lot of people do like to think through things like natural options, herbs, heat, different things that they can do, at home herbally, and home remedies to really manage their symptoms. So that's physical self-care. Then the second thing is emotional self-care. So how are you managing the difficult emotions that may come along with living with fibroids? And that's things like building resilience. So these are the lessons that we've learned from our research, is building resilience. So how to bounce back after these difficult emotions or difficult things that happen. It's also having some me time. We are women, we might be living with fibroids, we might be wives, we might be looking after children, we have to go to work, we're helping at church. So it's taking a step back and saying, I do need some time for myself, to look after myself, to recuperate and rejuvenate. It's also thinking about peer support, like we mentioned before, connecting with other women that might have fibroids. But it's also thinking about counseling. Do you need counseling to help you manage those difficult emotions when you do encounter them? Then there's intellectual self-care. So that's learning. For us, we explain this as learning more about fibroids and how to manage them. So that's all the reading that you might have to do, the researching that you might have to do. All of this is time consuming, but these are things that you might have to do to empower yourself to understand fibroids, going to educational events. And what we think needs to be done is including things like fibroids, endometriosis, and PCOS in women's health clinics, so that women have that information easy to hand. Then there's the social self-care. So how can we improve our ability to interact socially despite living with fibroids and having these very disruptive symptoms? So it's thinking through, how can we stay connected? How can we, because if we are isolated, that kind of really compounds how we're feeling in terms of our mental health. It can even make your symptoms worse because you're feeling down, and that can really exacerbate your symptoms. So it's looking at how we can stay connected in a positive way. And women were employing all sorts of strategies to enable them to still do the things that they like to do. And one example from our research was that a young lady had what we call the fibroid grab bag. So she had a bag just full of everything that she needed if she was going out. So she'd have a change of clothes, pads, pain medication, you name it. She had it in that sort of like fibroid grab bag, so that she could still go out, still have her fun, but she has all the things that she needs to manage while she's out. Then there's occupational self-care. So that's creating a positive work environment and experience. So like I would have said before, we're finding that women who have fibroids have a very difficult time in the workplace. So how can we change that? And one of the ways that we can do that is really trying to see how we can improve communication between women and their managers and colleagues. I know you may not want to necessarily share everything because that's quite personal in the workplace, but you must have some type of communication, because if you do have a chronic health condition like fibroids, you may need to take time off work, you may be feeling very unwell and coming into work, and you want people to understand that so that they can make the necessary adjustments so that you can thrive in the workplace. So that might mean speaking up, but also it might be that we need to look at policies in the workplace. Are they fibroids friendly and fair? And then also thinking about self-advocacy. So how can you advocate for yourself in the workplace? And then finally, there's spiritual self-care. So when we looked at the research and really the things that women were telling us, religious beliefs did play an important role in terms of inner strength and inner peace. And so it's thinking about also how can you make that connection with God so that you can have that inner peace and strength to really move through, because this is a very difficult condition to live with sometimes. So that's self-care. And then we also looked at self-management as also a tool to help women improve their health and well-being. So I won't go through it in detail, but really just to say that self-management now is a patient working with their healthcare professional to better manage their day-to-day challenges. And really, the key to this is the good doctor-patient relationship, and also having access to well-informed other healthcare professionals from other disciplines. So that's the nurses, the pharmacists, the counselors, the dietitians. So really surrounding yourselves with healthcare professionals that can really support your journey, people that you feel comfortable with, and that really make your whole process a lot easier. They're able to give you information, give you support, help you address the day-to-day challenges that you're encountering. So the other thing that came up, so just to move on now, the other thing that came up in our project really was that menstrual health education is so important. So, I mean, we now have a formal definition for menstrual health, which has been defined as menstrual health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity in relation to the menstrual cycle. So really what we're thinking through here is that we need to focus a lot on menstrual health education and educating women and girls about their menstrual health in terms of its entirety. So the physical, the mental, the social, everything to do with menstrual health. And the reason why we've said that is because when we then looked at some of the interviews and looked at what women were saying to us, we realized that a lot of women are not really aware of what a normal period should look and feel like. And so what this means is that women will have symptoms and live with these symptoms for many, many years and not realizing that there's an underlying health condition. And I think I said that before. And so what we feel is that menstrual health education needs to be part of the education that every young girl receives at school, so that they are aware from an early age of how to manage, deal with their periods, and they know what is an abnormal versus an normal period, so that they can take prompt action. And then we also think that women need to be aware of the conditions that might impact their menstrual health. So whether that's fibroids, PCOS, endometriosis. And menstrual health education is so important because it will help us tackle a lot of the myths and misinformation about fibroids, so that we can have more accurate information circulating, and that can only be empowering. So really, from our experience, this is just like quick summary of our research project, and we do have a full report that we can make available. So from our experience, from the patient's point of view, fibroids are a serious, mostly chronic health condition that affects every aspect of a woman's life. They are challenging both mentally and physically, and we believe they require more attention so women get the support that they need. So now what I'm going to just tell you quickly about is, we do research, it's interesting, but what we want to do is make sure that research translates into action. And so what we did with our research project was that we created a report, we provided some recommendations for the Ministry of Health, for Ministry of Labor, all sorts of people, and we disseminated that. But we ourselves also looked at what we could do to try and correct some of what we were seeing coming out of this research. And so what we did was we started off thinking through what could we do. So we have a menstrual health education project, and the idea behind this project was to address the previously mentioned issues. And we thought one of the best ways we could do that is to initiate change by targeting the next generation. So our project aims to educate, empower, and engage girls and boys, because what we want boys to become is men that become compassionate allies of women. So we also wanted to educate boys about menstruation. And so this was a partnership between WASH United, they're an NGO based in Germany, the Advancement of Children Foundation, they provided us with a grant, UNICEF and the Department of Gender Affairs in Nevis. And then we also had other collaborators with the Ministry of Education. So what we did was we decided not to reinvent the wheel. WASH United already has a really good mental health education tool. And so what we did was we adapted that for St. Kitts and Nevis, and we called that Teresa's World. And we recruited 2 mental health educators, and WASH United trained us and the mental health educators to deliver workshops to girls and boys in St. Kitts and Nevis. So far, we've reached over 600 children in St. Kitts and Nevis through summer camps, schools, and churches. And the sessions have been very well received, and we feel that we've really been able to empower young girls to really educate them about their periods, to prepare them for their periods, to educate them about what a normal period should look and feel like, and also to educate boys as well so that they can support their sisters, mothers, etc., etc. And like I said, the sessions have been very well received, very positive, and we're really, really pleased, and really does show that we can make a significant difference when it comes to the health and well-being of our young girls, and particularly their menstrual health, and empowering them to have these conversations, because they haven't, a lot of the time, some of these girls haven't been able to have these conversations prior to having these sessions. And so you can see there's a lot of love. Here's our mental health educator hugging one of the young ladies. And so we're really, really happy with the way the project is going. And just to show you the impact and really the difference this type of work can make, you know, when we take that research and we try and translate it into action. So girls have said it helped me to understand how to deal with my period. It shows our sisterhood. You know, they've been able to talk about it with comfort and trust. It's helpful so that when I get on my period, I feel ready. Now I feel better and relaxed, and then feeling more able to express themselves. So we're really happy with how that project is going, and we just hope that it will continue to make a difference. We've also been doing fibroids webinars and workshops, again, to support women that are living with fibroids. And all of this came directly from the research. We looked at like some of the areas that women said there were gaps. So things around fibroids and diet, fibroids and exercise, fibroids and your mental health. We had a whole holistic panel discussion where we had an HR professional, a mental health professional, a gynecologist, really speaking through all the different issues that women may go through and how they can address those issues. We looked at fibroids and fertility, managing fibroid pain, and also womb wellness. And we will hopefully continue to deliver health education sessions for women with fibroids to ensure that we address some of those information gaps that women told us about. We're also trying to produce information because women said, okay, we don't have information that has been developed here. So we've developed a guides on fibroids and exercise, fibroids and your mental health. During COVID, we developed a guide on COVID-19 and fibroids. We've developed some infographics around fibroids and what you need to know and how to manage fibroids. And then recently, we're just so grateful. We got a small donation from the Fibroids Agenda Fund. And so we're going to use that to develop a fibroids and nutrition guide. And then finally, just to say that again, so support is really important. And so we've taken our time with this to try and see how we can develop a support system for women with fibroids. So currently we have put out a survey in St. Kitts and Nevis and encouraging women who have fibroids, endometriosis and PCOS to complete our survey, because what we want to do is to create a fibroid support group, but we want it to meet the needs of women. And so we just have a survey out right now just to try and get women's insights on the type of support group that they would like, the type of information that they would like to see, so that we can provide a support group that really meets the needs of women with fibroids. So just to conclude, so fibroids are a significant public health challenge, affect every aspect of a woman's life. We do believe it requires a lot more attention from the Ministry of Health, from public health professionals, from NGOs, because right now you don't see a lot of information, as you would know, about fibroids locally. And so we do need a lot more attention. And this is because we want women to be empowered with information and have access to relevant support. We do need a lot more sensitivity and empathy across the board, whether it's from the public, healthcare professionals, family and friends, when it comes to women's health issues, not just fibroids. And we're just doing the little that we can really to address some of these issues and hope that we will really try and make a difference in the lives of women who are living with fibroids. So I think that is it. Thank you so much for your time. Like I said, I just did a little quick overview of the research. There was a lot more that I could have shared. So if you do want to see the report, you're very welcome. It's on our website and you're very welcome to download it. So thank you so much. And I hope that was useful.
Thank you so bravo. Really, that work is so important and so well done and so needed. So absolutely needed, 100%, because whenever I am trying to speak to West Indian populations here in Brooklyn, we don't have the data. It just simply doesn't exist. And it's very hard. Like, I just have to speak from my experiences as a patient and working with patients, because the data just isn't there. And thank you so much for doing this work, because it is really so important.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I think that is the one of the biggest problems that we have, is that we don't necessarily have a lot of data. And the problem is, if you don't have the data, then you can't go to the Ministry of Health, you can't go to the policymakers and say there is a need and we need the action. And so I think it's really important to do the research so that we can show that there is a need and to show exactly what that need is as well. Because I think sometimes policymakers can think some of these stories are just like a one-off, but actually what we're seeing is not a one-off. There are many women going through exactly the same thing. and these issues do need to be addressed.
Absolutely. Odelia, please.
Thank you, Abby, so very
Mhm.
much. I'll be messaging you later.
Okay, no problem.
All right. But we have no questions in the chats, either on Facebook or here. So I want to open up the floor if anybody has any questions for Abby. We do have some time allotted to your questions. So if you have any questions, you can just raise your hand or unmute your mic or place it in the chat, whatever feels more comfortable to you. But don't have the question in your mind and not ask it, okay? Abby, I could really see the connection between the stories that we were hearing earlier and the research. The research just put the stories in a quantifiable manner in which, as you were saying, policymakers can understand it. Because it's one thing for me to come and tell you my story, but it's another, they deal with numbers. They deal with
Yeah,
numbers, dollars and cents, and basically how is this going to affect our bottom line?
that's right.
And we can't continue to keep putting women's health at the bottom of the priority list. I think I can't remember who it was, but one of the ladies earlier said if men were suffering with fibroids, they would definitely already have a cure or a way to prevent fibroids. And it always strikes me that there is more money put into Viagra and men's erectile dysfunction than endometriosis and PCOS and fibroids. It's always, why not put that same energy into women's health conditions? So the work that you're doing is so important and so valuable, and putting a Caribbean face to it, because a lot of the research that we read is based in the States or in
Mhm.
Europe or
That's
in
right.
some country, and it feels so far removed from your experience, because you were able to talk about the holistic um self-care and the holistic treatments that women require. It's not just medication and surgery and procedures. We need that general support and other options. We from the Caribbean, we like bush. Bush cures everything. Like, what bush can I drink for my fibroids? Like, these are things
Exactly.
that we need. Bush tea cures everything. So what can I drink for fibroids? Like,
Yeah,
we need more Caribbean-based information that
that's right.
meets our needs. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, definitely, and that came out in the research. People were just like they really wanted more information that was Caribbean based. So that really did come out a lot when we were interviewing women. And then just to the point that you were mentioning before about the policymakers wanting to see dollars and cents, and so policymakers really we need to do just so much more research around women's health in the Caribbean, because if we don't, I think we're going to continue to see that some of these issues are not going to be addressed. So we need to be able to show the statistics. We need to be able to show the impact. We need to show how this affects productivity. So we really need to show that women's health is a human rights issue. It's a sustainability issue. It's even, so we really need to make that connection with policymakers so that we can really see the change that we want to see. Yeah, definitely. Because right now, as I said, we don't really have a women's health strategy. There's not a lot of focus on fibroids, endometriosis, PCOS. And so as NGOs, we try to do some of that work, but it's difficult for us as NGOs. We don't have a lot of resources and staff. So if we can, team up with the Ministry of Health, make the case that, look, we do need a lot more attention, then we can get a lot more done. We can do a lot more awareness raising. We can provide a lot more support, and we can make sure that there's funding allocated to ensure that our islands can deliver the treatments that women need in terms of the treatments that are needed for fibroids.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. Does anybody else have any comments or questions for Abby before we close? Oh, somebody's hand is raised. Jay, go ahead.
Hi, I do have one question for you, Abby. I know you mentioned that you did I don't know if it was like a webinar that you had mentioned, but you said you spoke with HR professionals in terms of fibroids, and it struck out, kind of stirred something up in me because I do remember a time when I was suffering with fibroids that I was always leery about getting a new job because how would I explain to my supervisors that I would need 2 to 3 days off when my menstrual cycle came? So I'm interested to know what was the feedback from HR professionals, or if that's anywhere that I can read. Um, and I do have to just throw in a little caveat as I've worked very closely with Lake Health and Wellbeing. Again, I'm the project assistant there, and thankfully, the Lake Health and Wellbeing does provide a much needed, I don't even, policy, work
Menstrual
policy.
leave.
They give you a menstrual leave every month. You get menstrual leave, and it's not held against you or anything like that. And I think more companies do need to implement things like that. So again, I'm just interested to know what the HR professionals thought in that part of the conversation.
Yeah, so I can definitely share the recording with you, but I think a lot of it was about openness and transparency from both sides, and really trying to have that conversation and come to some sort of like understanding as to how you could operate in the workplace while still having a chronic health condition. But what I think we need to do is that advocacy, and really encourage businesses to introduce menstrual health leave or menstrual leave. To understand, and I think there are countries that have already started doing this. And so I think we need to do that advocacy work around how can we make our workplaces a little bit more friendly when it comes to menstrual health issues. Because women do suffer with a lot of pain, the heavy bleeding, and it can be difficult to go to work in situations like that. And so therefore we do need to think that through. So it can be menstrual leave, it can be working from home, it can be having like a more relaxed day or whatever it is, but we do need to think that through, and try and really understand how best we can support women in the workplace so that they can, feel comfortable enough to speak to their colleagues, speak to their line managers around what is the best solution around this. So I think when we did have that webinar, it was a lot of kind of having conversations, really trying to have those conversations with your line manager around what it is that you need and being open and honest about, what you do need. Like I said, I can share the recording so that you can go through and see what the HR professional had to say. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much for asking that question. Very good question. And thanks, Abby. Does anyone else have any other questions? Don't be shy. If not, I hand back over to Alicia.
Okay. Thank you so much, Abby, for coming in and speaking to us today, going over all of your research. It's so valuable and so, like I said, so needed. I foresee many more endeavors together. Because we only have each other, right? So if we can't have each other's back in these um initiatives, then who really can we have? Thank you to Abby, thank you to Kimya and Laana for speaking to us today and sharing their stories. This is our last speaker session for the year. So thank you for anyone who has joined us in any of the events that we have had all year. We are looking forward to 2026. We have so much to share with you. And we're going to be continuing our speaker series in 2026 as well, and having more in-person events in addition to the things in the virtual space. Thank you everyone for coming, and please enjoy your evenings. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Good night, good night, good night.